Welcome to your top-rated global podcast that is your one-stop shop specializing in entrepreneurship, self-development, smart investment decisions, and other relevant topics that add value. This podcast is hosted by owner, doctor, and content creator Dustin Steffi. We are blessed to have accolades that include a 2022 nomination by the People's Podcast Awards in the category of business, which is voted on by the people, all of you. Money donated to two amazing causes, cystic fibrosis and the Boys and Girls Club. Lastly, global recognition of being a top 50 podcast in 4 countries. Without further ado, let's chop it up. Welcome to a special episode of Choppin' with Fire. You're joined with your host today, Dustin Steffi, and my buddy, friend, Howie, who is going to co-host with me today. Howie, how are you?
Good, Dustin. How are you doing, man?
Doing well. It's great to see you. I'm excited for the topic today. I think it fits for you and I both.
Same here, same here.
So today we want to talk about, we have the draft coming up for NFL. A topic that I've wanted to bring up for quite some time now is education on this transfer portal that we have in collegiate sports right now. There's a lot of people that have heard the term transfer portal, but I don't think they understand all the rules and everything backing the transfer portal. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Howie?
Yeah, I honestly, I didn't even know about it till we had talked, and yeah, probably most people don't know the specifics behind it.
So let's help the audience out a little bit, like some nice little like information to segue in as we talk about it. So the transfer portal started in October of 2018, and the whole point of having the transfer portal was to allow athletes the ability and flexibility to go and play for the school or coach or whomever they want to play for. So you had brought it up pretty well in pre-roll. It's kind of similar to being traded in the NFL or in the NBA or in the MLB or whatever the case may be. I just think that with the transfer portal, there's more to it. So there's a lot of hate and a lot of love, and we want to address both of them, obviously, to have kind of the full comprehensive details for the transfer portal. Initially, my thought of the transfer portal was I disliked it, and then I slowly evolved over time, right? So I don't 100% like it, but I don't 100% dislike it. There are some advantages and disadvantages. The biggest thing that I see that is advantageous for these players is maybe sometimes when you're recruited right out of high school and you sign for college to make your appearance to play there. Sometimes what you're promised maybe doesn't align. Sometimes the coach versus the player, you don't have that relationship that you thought you were going to have. So I see advantages.
Or the coach leaves, right? Some of the coaches change schools all the time.
Yeah. And sometimes the players want to follow. I mean, I've seen that happen 100 times. So
yeah, or they're promised to play by that coach. The coach leaves and someone else comes in, and their chance to play or be as part of the team to what they were promised totally changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree with that. A couple things that I do disagree with, though, is this transfer portal has made, in my mind, the coaching position harder. And the reason I say that is because it's like a Hail Mary, right? You don't know when a player's going to leave. They don't have to give too much notice if they're going to be transferring. They can say that they're transferring tomorrow, and the coach has 7 days to get that turnaround in, so the player is posted in the transfer portal. So
No, I think they basically have to, as soon as the player tells a school administrator that they want to be on the portal, so that administrator, they have 2 days by law, by the rules of the portal, to post them. And but my issue is like, what happens if the player doesn't transfer? Are they seen as, you know, is the team or coach going to treat them differently because they were asked to be transferred? Or how does that affect the player if they don't go somewhere else?
that's a really good question, because I've seen the successful side of the transfer portal. So I have a friend that went into it,
Mm,
and he was getting different offers from different schools, and he was going after it hardcore. I think it depends on who you are and how you use the transfer portal, because we do have some of these student athletes that don't know how to use it, right? They say they want to
mm,
transfer, and then, like magic, they're in the portal and they're hoping that they're going to get picked. And then you have some of these athletes that are tenacious, right? That are like, all right, now that I'm in it, I'm going to give my highlights to this school, this school, this school, this
right.
school, this school. And they're
They go
getting
sell themselves.
correct. So I think there are so many different avenues that you can go with this transfer portal. And it starts with, I guess, if we look at the student athlete, how active is the student athlete that goes into
Right.
that portal, right? Because
Hmm.
they're data wise, so from 2021, according to the transfer portal dashboard, 50% of athletes, which in 2021, that was about 9,567 athletes who entered the transfer portal, enrolled at another NCAA school. 43%, or about 8,200 athletes, are still exploring their options, transferred to a non NCAA school, or left their sport. The remainder of the athletes withdrew from the transfer portal. That's 2021 data. 2020 data, it's about 49% of athletes who entered the transfer portal enrolled at a new school. 44% are still exploring the options, transferred or dropped out.
Wow.
So right there, 2 years of data, 2020, 2021, about the success rate of going to a different school is about 50%.
Right.
And that, mind you, that counts all athletes that are in the transfer portal. So when I mean all athletes, I mean every single sport, because the transfer portal is for every single sport.
Right.
That, to me, so 1 out of 2 make it and transfer, right?
Yeah, no,
50%, 1 out of 2.
that means it's working, or what it was designed to do, at least to
Yeah.
help the players.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But then you have to empathize a little bit with the other 50% that,
And absolutely, because what's happening to their careers? Are their career, to the ones that are not playing their sport anymore, does that mean their chances to move on uh were cut off? Or are they not? What mental health issues arise from the players that are either that have to stay where they are and not like what they are, where they are? Does that come into play? So there's a lot that you know is going on in these. Some of them are just teenagers, right?
yeah.
Or just, there's a lot going on in their lives at that time, and to not be happy where they are is, it might be difficult.
The other staggering thought that I have is, what's it look like for when you go from college to professional with the draft? What are the odds of players that enter? Like, for example, we'll narrow it down. NFL, right?
Mhm.
These NCAA athletes from all these colleges go to a combine
Right.
and showcase their skills. to the scouts, the coaches, whomever is at the combine. Those people that go to the combine, not every athlete goes to the combine that's getting drafted.
Correct.
So I'm curious, and I don't have the statistic in front of me, and I don't know if you can rattle something out, but I'm curious if this transfer portal data aligns with kind of how the draft data is. About 50% of athletes that want to go and play in professional sports get drafted.
Yeah, I don't have a statistic about that, but I assume most of the people that are playing were drafted, um, and the scouting combine is, it's a tough scenario. Have you ever been to it?
I've been 1 year, 1 year.
I've been a lot of times.
Yeah,
And you're brought in and you given little time to warm up, and then you have to you have to do all the different, you have to run the 40, you have to do, depending what position you are is what you need to do, and you're not given a lot of time. You're playing with people that you're not used to playing with, in a scenario where all the coaches are determining your fate almost. So it's a high pressure situation, and it could be extremely difficult.
I agree.
No other sport has something like that.
So the NBA, there's no like combine for the NBA or anything
Not
like
that I'm
that.
aware.
Oh,
Not that I'm
okay.
aware of. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, when I went to the combine that 1 year, I saw the 40. And you're right, depending on the position you play, it depends on what you're doing in the combine. But I watched the 40, I watched the vertical jump.
the high
I
jump. Yeah,
Yep,
yep,
which I
vertical.
thought was interesting as hell. I liked it.
Yeah,
I mean, hey, I watched the reps that
yep,
each of the athletes were doing, benching 225 as much as you can.
yep.
So there's a lot. There's a lot, and that doesn't even guarantee you
And there's
any spot.
some sort of IQ test as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, and all of this doesn't guarantee you a draft spot. It just gives you the visibility that you
right,
need to potentially get drafted. Now, again, it's not the same as the transfer portal, but there are
correct.
similarities, right? I
Hmm.
think we can play off data a little bit and really tie a conclusion to transfer portal versus being recruited and drafted for professionals. But that's not what we're here to do today. We're here to talk about that transfer portal a little bit more in detail. There are a couple coaches I did some research on with the transfer portal. One of the coaches was Clemson's coach, Dabu Sweeney. He said that it's an absolute mess and a train wreck. The kids are going to be the ones who suffer at the end. There are going to be a lot of kids that end up with no degrees and make decisions based off the wrong things. There are going to be a lot of decisions based on short-term stuff, and they're going to sacrifice the long-term value of education, relationships, and connectivity. So taking that paragraph right there from the Clemson coach, I don't disagree. This transfer portal to me is noise.
Hmm.
Okay. When I went to school, if I committed to the college that I went to, I was there for the 4 years. There was no transfer portal. And
Yeah, I wish he would have went into a little more detail, like why someone wouldn't get a degree or anything like that. Because if you're not a student athlete, you have the right to transfer anywhere you want, as long as your grades get you into that school that you want to transfer to. Um, and I'm sure most people that do transfer do get their degree. So I'm wondering why why they feel that way and how it affects the student athlete different than just a regular student.
Well, if we speculate on that little paragraph that I read based off of Coach Sweeney's you know, thoughts on this, what my thought is the noise is getting in the way of the education. So I think what he's thinking is the first priority of any athlete that goes to a college is to get their degree.
Correct.
So they have that sort of backup in case they don't get drafted, in case they maybe get hurt, whatever the case may be, they have their education.
Right.
And I think Coach Sweeney is saying that the education is the most important thing. Not that football isn't important, because obviously you're trying to create a winning team, but the whole point isn't just to go to play football. It's to get your education as well and to upgrade yourself. So I speculate with that little blurb right there that he is preaching on the importance of education and getting your degree.
You know what statistic would be interesting about from the transfer portal is why did the student athlete enter the transfer portal? Was it based on the athletics? Was it based on the academics? Was it based on they just didn't like the school or the town, or what was the driving force behind it? So that data would be interesting to know.
I can find that out right now. We just so happen to be in front of a computer, right?
Oh, good deal.
So some statistics that I found, and this is on the NCAA.org website, so pretty credible website. Division I transfer portal entrants transferred to another NCAA school. So undergrad transfers, 8,197 athletes. Graduate transfers, I forgot even to play off of graduate students, 3,705 transfers in 2022. I'm giving us all 2022 stats. Okay.
Understood.
The success of transfer portal entrance in a percentage. So 78% in 2022 for Division I were successful, 20% for Division II, and 2% for Division III. The months that the transfer portal is really lucrative: November and December, March and April. So we're talking after your fall sport, after your spring sport, pretty much.
Right.
Now here's where the stats get really interested. 57% of student athletes reported to have enrolled at a new NCAA school. 57%.
Yeah.
43% are active in the portal, but they're still exploring options. So again, it aligns with our stats from the beginning. And then here's an interesting one I didn't even think about: financial aid, right? So scholarships.
Right.
35% of athletes remain active in the transfer portal that have had financial aid. And keep in mind, when you put yourself in the transfer portal, you're voiding the aid from the school you're currently at. 55% of those transferred and received athletics aid, 10% transferred without athletic aid. Now, if you don't have a scholarship, these are stats for if you didn't have a scholarship and you entered the transfer portal. 60% are still active in the transfer portal. 21% actually transfer and receive aid. And then 19% transferred without aid still.
Wow.
So those are some those are some good stats right there for us to kind of play off of a little bit. So is it about the financial aid? Is it about the coach and not having that connection? Is it
Mm-hmm.
about not having the culture that you were promised and you wanted to go to a different school? Is it about visibility? A lot of
Right.
these athletes are kids still. Okay, let's be
Oh yeah,
realistic here.
no doubt.
It's like enrolling in the military. When you're 18 years old, do you really know what you want? Or are you just making a decision to make a decision?
Right.
So it bodes the question, why are these athletes transferring, right? It could be
Mm-hmm.
poor culture or the culture doesn't align. It could be visibility. So you want to go play for a bigger school in hopes that you're going to start so you get the visibility to move on professionally.
Right.
It could be coaching differences. You don't align with the coach. And so
And
therefore,
I think to make the transfer portal more successful, having that data would be extremely helpful.
I don't disagree with you whatsoever. I think it's important to understand what these athletes are using the transfer portal for. But I think it's also important that these athletes understand what the transfer portal is and
Mhm.
how many of these athletes actually understand.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'm we can pull data all day long, but the most important thing is, do these athletes understand like what this portal is for? And furthermore, do they understand like how it can help and or hurt them?
right, right.
So, I mean, I'm looking at a couple statistics right here off of NBC Sports because they talk about how the transfer portal works and some of the data that they have on here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for example, about 20% of athletes that enter the transfer portal enter because they want to go to a bigger school.
Right,
So maybe they put in their time for a year or even two in the school that they originally got drafted for, right? And
right,
now that they've played and have had that visibility and they can show how well they do in college, maybe now they have the better opportunity to
right,
go to a bigger school because they showcase their talent in college.
right. And you have to, I get that, right? You go to a bigger school, you get on TV more, you're seen more by scouts, and it just all, is up from there.
Yeah, I agree. Here's Do you know who Jimbo Fisher is?
No.
Texas A&M coach.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep,
Sorry.
yep. So here's what he says about the transfer portal. He says it's funny when a guy gets in the portal, he already knows where he's going. So Fisher told the Paul Feinbaum show, a lot of schools have been using that portal extensively, so they're getting guys like that. I think that's a big factor that goes on right now. I agree. So I agree with Coach
Mhm.
Fisher because when you're building a program, now you've added an extra element and an extra layer because this transfer portal is visible to one person per school, right? You can log in, you have one login for one person at any given college,
Right.
and they can see who's
Who's
hitting
in
that
it?
transfer portal. Exactly. So
Right.
now they can strategize, oh, wow, I might want this player because of X, Y, and Z. This is what I'm missing. So now you're adding an extra element of how you build your teams.
Right. It's almost like having a general manager, uh, y- to go out and get other players.
Well, and this is what I was talking about in pre-roll. The coach's job, in my mind, has gotten harder
Mhm.
because not only are you recruiting, looking at different high schools and trying to build teams and bring that culture in, but you have
Right.
to look at the transfer portal too.
Right.
And you have to really like see what there is out there.
No, no doubt, no doubt. And then, reteaching your, depending on what sport it is, reteaching your schemes to new people that, you know, you might not have had to do if someone didn't leave.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. So you bring someone that has talent in that was at another college. Are you retooling them to the new culture? How long does that take? Do
Right,
these players, there are so many stats that you and I can pull, right? What is the percentage of players that play in their
right,
first year transferring and using the transfer portal? I know there's plenty that do play, but I think there's plenty that don't.
right.
So did you make a good decision at that point? So you went from playing sometimes or half the game or whatever to riding the pine. Was
Right.
that a
And
was that a lucrative decision? You know?
right. And you could have gone from playing 3 or 4 years to maybe losing a year playing and just playing for that your one last year.
Right. So these kids are gambling in my mind
Hmm.
with their future.
Right.
And
Right.
again, it isn't just about the sport, it's about the academics. So we look at like Colorado University, we have Dion who's coaching, right, for their football team, and he's trying to bring in all this talent. However, he's getting pushback from
Hmm.
the academic side from the university because they're not going to budge on changing the dynamic of their great institution. It is
Right.
about the education first, sports second.
Right. What would be an interesting, there's some interesting data to look into is, did people that transferred, did they get their degree from the school that they transferred to? Um, did their what was their intentions for transferring? Was it to go to a bigger school to get more to play at a bigger school to get more exposure? Then was that successful, and did that take them to the next level? So those are all interesting facts to find out, to see if it really has been helpful in that sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there are so many elements with the transfer portal, and we haven't even gotten into the old school way of thinking, right? So a player that doesn't get recruited from
Mhm.
high school to college, what do they typically do? They redshirt.
Right.
They earn their way. So we have that element that's still in play. So you even have red shirts that try to play, they can't, and they try to enter the transfer portal.
Right.
There's just there's so much data, right? And we can spend probably a good full 24-hour day talking about the transfer portal, probably. You know what I mean? With all the data and everything that we can
Right.
pull. Uh this isn't just for football too. I want to remind the
Right.
audience
Yes,
that the
for every
transfer
sport.
portal is for every sport, men, women, all of it. Uh
Yeah, I think the only caveat is you have to wait a certain amount of time after the season ends, right? Or is it immediately after the season ends? That's the only issue.
so I'm glad you asked about that. I did write down a couple notes. So there's a 45-day winter window opening the day
Right.
after championship selections are made in your given sport. Um there are windows to go into the transfer portal. If
Right.
you're smart, you would play the windows, right? So, for example, in football, we know that there's the national championship game. So, someone that wants to enter the portal, if they're qualified and playing in the national championship game, they have they have a 14-day period that's past what the normal window is to go into
Right.
the transfer portal because they were in the national championship game. They wanted to stay, they wanted to play in it, whatever the case may be.
Right.
I think it's ridiculous if you try to enter the transfer portal after being in a national championship game. I'm just
Right.
saying that's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
me,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah,
But
exactly.
there are rules put in place for it, that for each sport, winter, spring, whatever, fall, they have different windows, and it looks like the windows are about 14-day windows.
Hmm.
And then there's a 45-day window for each of these after championship selections and stuff like
Right.
that. So there are definitely windows. Again, I this was something that wasn't even in play when I was in school. So this is real new still, but again, the general consensus, it's kind of split, right? There are
Hmm.
people that like it and people that hate it. So I kind of want to weigh the pros and cons kind of with you, right? So we got some good information here on the transfer portal. We have an idea of what it is. We know the complexities with it. So what are some pros of this transfer portal?
Yeah, so some pros of it are, you know, players getting to the student athletes getting to, if they're in a situation that they really don't want to be in, it gets them out of that situation. Uh, for whatever the reason may be. And that's probably the biggest pro of it, right? Is being in a situation that you don't want to be in, causing you mental health issues. So to me, I feel like that would be like the biggest the biggest pro.
I agree. I think the biggest pro is the flexibility to play where you want if you can get into the school that you want to.
Right. Right. For whatever that reason is. And I'm sure each student athlete has a different reason for wanting to leave or to transfer.
And we've dropped some statistics already today, right? I I want this to be educational not only for our audience, but I have athletes that listen. And so the biggest takeaway here is yes, you have a transfer portal pro. The pro to it is you can enter in and get to a school that more closely aligns with what you're about. A con, though, is we brought up the statistics. Only 50% of people, one out of two,
Right.
actually successfully go through the whole transfer portal process and get to said different school.
Right. And what does that do to, and if you don't, right,
Mm-hmm.
what does that do to the culture on the team? What is that? Are you treated differently? Are you, will you still play? Will they look to take your scholarship away because they know you don't want to be there? So you really have to have, I would think you're taking a big chance and you have to have your ducks in a row. But if you know, not wanting to, if wanting to leave supersedes just wanting to play, then that's probably, the answer.
Yeah, I'm not here to say the transfer portal is garbage, and I'm not
Mhm.
here to say that the transfer portal is awesome. So unbiased, I'm looking at it, and if I were let's just put me in this position. I go and I play for I don't know. We'll say I go and play for the University of Washington, right?
Mhm.
And the coach came in for his initial recruitment right out of high school for me, talked to my parents, talked to us about the culture. We signed on the dotted line for receiving a scholarship and going to play at University of Washington. Well, I'm going through my first year and I'm seeing that maybe I'm not playing as much, or the culture that was promised to me isn't really aligning, or the coach fed me something that I thought was positive, but I'm not receiving. So
Right.
now I go into the transfer portal. I'm like, all right, coach, this isn't working out for me and I don't want to waste your time or mine. I want to enter the transfer portal so I can go to a school that more closely aligns. Now I'm playing the odds, right? I'm playing the
Hmm.
odds that I have a 50% chance. Actually, in 2022, it's more of a 40% chance of not going to a different school,
Right.
completely just trashing my collegiate career, right? Because I can't play because I already committed to going into the transfer portal.
Right.
And so now I may have preemptively ended or prematurely ended my collegiate
Right.
career.
Right.
Again, the most important thing about going to college is getting the education. I get it. But if you're a college athlete and you're trying to go to the next level, you're really hindering your ability to go to the next level if you make a poor decision.
Correct.
So these are things that are stacked against the transfer portal almost. Like, is it a good tool? And let's take a look at it from the coach's perspective too. So watch this. Coach builds a team. He thinks he has everything he needs, but the one wild card is that transfer portal. You could lose a player at any given time to the transfer
Right.
portal. So how are these coaches building their teams knowing that they have this looming transfer portal?
Right.
It makes the job of the coach, in my mind, harder. Yes, the transfer portal is awesome because you can see all the talent and grab talent, but it's also a hindrance as well too, because if you lose players, now you're losing a part of your team.
Correct.
This is it's crazy, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, we see it in the NFL too all the time, right? Whether you get hurt or you go back to free agency or whatever the case may be, we see it in the NFL,
Right.
but we never saw it in college until now.
Right.
So what's your thought on that? Like, what's your thought on the coach's job, especially with this transfer portal in play? I mean, you've been around this your whole life, so you see things too.
Yeah, no, the coaches have a very difficult job from uh, it's a 12-month job and most people that aren't close, people that just watch sports don't understand or don't realize that it's 12 months, 365 year day job, and so this just adds to that workload because you constantly have to, know what's there or in terms of players. And do you have to, maybe you need to have a backup plan for certain positions or certain people should they decide to enter the transfer portal.
I think coaches earn the money that they get paid because, like you said, a coach's job doesn't stop when the season's over. It's
Yeah.
24/7.
Yeah.
And you're always thinking about how you can improve your team. I am blessed because in my family, I know a few coaches and
Mhm.
I understand what they go through and I see the amount of time that they put in and it's a lot.
It's a huge
It's
commitment.
insane. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
big commitment. When you choose to be a coach, I don't care if it's high school, I don't care if it's I don't know, T-ball league, I don't care where you're coaching, it's a big commitment
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt.
because now you're on the stage, right? You're on a stage to make sure that you're taking care of your team.
Right.
You're on a stage making sure that you're winning, right? So you're building a culture to be successful.
Right.
And you're on the stage for scrutiny if you don't recruit certain people.
Exactly. Exactly.
And in football, it's a lot, right? Especially college football. If you do not make bowl games, if you do not win, if you do not like bring butts and seats for games, you're failing as a coach.
Right. Right.
So we have all those factors that are stacked against the coaches. Like this is why I said, and this is why some of these coaches dislike the transfer portal, in my opinion. It adds another element to the game.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. No doubt.
And again, I'm going to harp this all day long. This isn't about whether or not the transfer portal is good or bad. This is more about educating on the transfer portal, using the resource appropriately, but making sure that you understand your first priority is to get your education.
Right, right.
And the coaches realize this too. I mean, there are GPA standards that you have to hold to be a collegiate athlete. I don't care who you are, you have to maintain a good GPA to be a student athlete. Again,
Right,
student first.
right. Exactly.
That's what makes it different from professionals, right? There is no school,
Mhm.
there's no GPA, there's lots of money, and your time commitment is your job is playing the sport, and you're going to do the best you can at it.
Right. Agreed.
So I I think with the transfer portal, I mean, there's another element, and we can get into that at another show, right? Which is NIL deals as well. To briefly brush on that, NIL deals are basically influencing athletes' decisions to transfer. And the reason I say that is because what NIL deals do is give the coaches and or players money for the sport that they're playing within college. And
Right.
NIL is fairly new too. I don't want to get into the weeds with that. I just wanted to brush on that one to know that there's another element on top of the transfer portal that is affecting why people are entering as well.
It's a whole other topic.
It is such a beast of a topic. We will get into it probably in a few weeks, but the biggest the biggest thing here is I'm looking at this transfer portal, and the big key takeaways I have from it are: one, it is a system that catalogs all the players in every sport, right?
Mhm.
Or transferring. It's it's positive in a sense that it gives freedom for players to choose where they want to go, but
Right.
it's a hindrance in a sense because it's like noise to me. Like when I played in my sport, I wanted to alleviate as much distraction as possible. And I feel like this transfer portal is noise. It's a
Mhm.
distraction. It's
I understand.
detracting away from the sports. I don't know. What do you feel about it? Like, do you there's definitely positives and negatives, but your overall thought, again, there's no right or wrong answer here. What is your thought of the transfer portal?
Yeah, I think my overall thought of the transfer portal is I feel like it gives the student athlete the opportunity to, you know, be comfortable where they are, or and give them an out if they don't like what they are. And ultimately, this is about the student athlete, right? Um, Having this a say over themselves that, hey, I'm not comfortable here for whatever the reason is. I'd like to leave. So this gives them the opportunity to do that. So in my mind, I feel like it's a good thing. I understand the statistics, only half continue to play and things like after when they enter the portal, but it just gives the student athlete the 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 decision to make over their own careers, so to speak. But they have to take into consideration all the data that has been collected over the last 5 years of, will they continue to play, or how successful have other people been after doing it? But at least there's an outlet for them. And so ultimately, colleges is about the student. So I think overall it's a good thing.
I have a different take for it, and there is no right or wrong answer here. Here's my take on it. Like I've already brought up a few times, this is noise to be added on not only to the athletes, but to the coaches and to the institutions.
Mhm.
Do I think it's positive to have options for our athletes? Absolutely. I agree with our athletes having the freedom and flexibility to do what they need to create their own success. I agree with it. However, are we creating bad habits? And for me, I think we are. We are creating habits where athletes that didn't have the transfer portal, they had to suck it up and figure out how to play in an environment that wasn't what they thought it would be. And the athletes that figured that out and rise to the occasion, they're better for it. Because guess what? When you go, let's just keep it on football, right? When you go to the combine and then you get drafted by an NFL team, are you on that NFL team semi like non-permanent? No,
Right.
probably not. You're sitting there and you're putting your time in for a few years before you play. It's very rare that I see a rookie that's drafted go to another team immediately the next year or the year after.
Right.
It's very
Right.
rare to see that. And
Right.
so this bodes the question, is the transfer portal creating bad habits and or hindering the learning abilities of overcoming circumstances or overcoming adversity? So
Yeah,
there
I
are
see what you're
things,
saying.
yeah, there are things that I question still, right? Like, in order to be a good athlete, in my mind, you have to have three key components. One component is obviously you have to be good at the sport.
Right.
I agree. That's the most important one. Second key component is your heart. Do you have enough heart to be able to play and put in all the effort to create success for your position? The third one is your ability to create a culture and overcome adversity. And I think we're taking that part away with this transfer portal. We're giving people an out instead of creating an environment where you suck it up and you figure it out and you're better
Right.
off for it.
Right. Yeah, some people have the ability to do that, and some people just don't, I hear what you're saying. Um and maybe I look at it from slightly different view as a dad who has three kids in college, and I've told all of them that, who and two out of the three had difficulty making the decision where to go, and they're not athletes in college. And I said, hey, this is not a 4-year commitment. If you don't like it after year one, then all you need is good grades and we can transfer. But you know you're a student, you need to get good grades, and that's all you need to worry about. If we can revisit if this is not the right place for you, you know in another time.
I guess it
Similar
depends. It depends,
similar type
right?
of thing.
Yeah, it depends from person to person how you were raised. So, how I was raised
Hmm.
was if I made a commitment to something, no matter what, you follow through on it, no
Right.
matter what. And I was raised pretty old school, right? So you make a commitment, you follow through, that's it. There is no, oh, I tried. No,
Right. Right.
you do, and that's it. So for
Different
me,
different
raising,
generation.
yeah, yeah. So for me, raising my 10-year-old, right? She wants to run track and she wants to run track collegiately too. So
Awesome.
I'm going down the road of, all right, if this is truly the sport that you want to do, this is the commitment that you have to put in now
Right.
in order to be successful in college. And a lot of these collegiate athletes have put in so much time and energy into perfecting themselves for their sport, only to what? Go into the transfer portal and fall short and never
Right.
play again. Like, that's not
Right.
okay. I mean, we have to weigh the
Yeah, that.
decisions here and we have to educate these athletes on,
Mhm.
like, is this truly the best or course of action for you?
Right, especially when it only has helped half the people that have entered it.
And that was the staggering statistic that was important to me. I mean, in 2022, it was about a 10% lift, right? So it's about
Hmm.
60-40 now. but that's still a lot of athletes that are still in the portal that don't have a school or a home.
Right. Right.
That's not okay.
Right.
I
Agreed.
think if you're good enough to play in college, everyone that had made it should be playing. I just think they made a poor decision going into the transfer portal.
Right.
I think you suck it up and you play as much as you can. I mean, here's an interesting statistic of people that play in collegiate sports. What do you think the statistic is of them moving on to the next level, which is professional?
Not very high.
Not at all. It is below 10%.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's staggering right there. So why are you prematurely like quitting in a
Right.
sense, right? When you can play in college at least and finish out all of college. Not
And it's
every
probably
athlete's going
less in
professional.
football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, in football, that statistic was staggering.
I was going
Three
to say it's
percent.
probably less than 5%.
Yes, 3%.
Yeah.
That I mean, we're talking about you're already a big fish in a big sea when you go from high school to college. But when you go from college to professional, now
Right.
you're a piranha with sharks. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it gets less and less the higher you go.
Of course. Of course.
So I guess for me, I'm not sitting here and saying that I think the transfer portal is garbage. I'm not going to say that. What I am going to say is, would I use it if I were in these athletes' shoes? Probably not.
Mhm.
I don't. I'm not the athlete that cares about getting visibility on TV. I'm not the athlete that cares about
Right.
if my feelings are hurt because the culture doesn't align, or I the coach yelled at me because I did something wrong, so now I have a bad relationship with the coach. That's not who I am. The
Right.
player I am is to rise to the occasion that's given to me, and that's
And
it.
right.
And I think that we're in a new generation, right, Howie? We're in a new generation where I think sometimes entitlement outweighs
Oh yeah,
what
no doubt.
what's right. And I think some of these athletes think they're entitled to be at a school that's big enough where they get the visibility, because then it's going to push them professionally into their sport even more. But that's just one area and one facet.
Right.
I would challenge, honestly, these athletes to challenge their coaches to get them the visibility that they need to move on. If they are truly good enough to play
Right.
professionally, then hopefully you have a good enough coach that has connections to get you to where you need to be. It isn't
Right.
just about being on TV or graduating from Alabama or Clemson or Notre Dame. You know what I mean? It's about,
Yeah.
what did you do with the time in your sport wherever you were in college? I
No, it's a
mean,
good point.
yeah, like look at the NCAA tournament this year. The Mountain West, not the best conference in the world, right? But a good conference. We
Mhm.
had San Diego playing for the title.
Right. Right.
I mean, there was no SEC school. I mean, we knocked out the SEC. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
it's all
Absolutely.
titles. It's all freaking titles, dude. And no one cares about the titles. At the end of the day, these coaches are smart enough to know where the talent is.
Right.
And if they want you, they're going to go after you.
Right.
So do we need a transfer portal? I don't know. I I'm half and half on this, right? Like, it
I
is
agree.
good.
I agree with you. I think anyone that goes to use it, and I think that's the purpose of this conversation, is just to educate yourself and weigh all the decisions before you do it.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of weighing decisions, this week's a big week in the NFL. We
Yep.
have the draft this week. You got any predictions for me?
I don't. I
Okay, all
don't.
right. I won't put you in the hot seat then. I think it'll be a good draft. There's a lot of good players. I'm actually excited to see how this draft works. I mean, big news for the week. I saw Aaron Rodgers signed with
Coming
the
to New York.
Jets.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming over to the Jets. We'll see what he
Yeah.
can do with them. I think he can probably make a big difference.
It's funny because he's a second quarterback coming from Green Bay to come to the Jets.
I agree. I'm kind of excited to see what he does because he has a lot of weapons on the Jets team too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for my people that love to bet sports, I would not count the Jets out this year. I think that they might be pretty damn good.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting.
Any other news in the sports world that you've heard of this week at all? That was the big one for me is
No,
seeing
that's
Aaron.
that's that's it. I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. I again, I always appreciate having you. I think this was a pretty important conversation. I know we didn't talk about everything, but
Right.
I don't want to devalue where the conversation is, which is just educating on the importance of using the transfer portal, educating on the importance of you as a human being. Like, can you figure it out? You
Right.
know, that sort of stuff. The soft skills, we are getting away from the soft skills, Howie, more and
Understood.
more when I see these generations coming into play, right? And I want to go back to the soft skills because that's what makes you a better athlete, a better
Right.
individual, better human.
Right.
So the key piece of advice for the week that I'll leave people with, since I always ask everyone else, but I never leave anybody with anything, is do your homework, do your research, do the right
Totally.
thing. Like, make sure the decision that you're making, you can live with either the repercussions or the positive enforcement. So make
Correct.
sure you're doing right by you, but do all the research.
Right. Couldn't agree more.
All right, Howie. So the next time we
Thank you,
have you
Dustin.
on, I think we'll be talking NIL. But for now, this is perfect. So thank you for coming on with me.
Thanks, Dustin. Have a great day.
You too.